Well, welcome everyone to our town hall on academics and student support. My name is Pedro. I'm the Vice Provost and Associate Professor of Economics. Before I introduce my colleagues, I want to make sure that if you need to watch this with closed caption, you can go down to the bar in your Zoom and there's a closed caption tab for you to be able to hit that and have it, the presentation be closed captioned. So we're very excited to be able to have conversations with you today. I'm joined by four other colleagues that will help me answer a lot of the questions I'm sure you have. I'll do the introductions for now, and then I'll explain the structure of this town hall, and hopefully we can go from there. I'm joined today by Teresa Leopold, Director of Student Support. She oversees the Student Opportunities and Advising Hub. Jen Edwards, Director of Accessibility Resources and ADA 504 Coordinator. Dr. Tracy Freeman, Executive Director of the Kokett Center for Academic Excellence. And Dr. Alan Birch, Director of Global Education. The way that we've been receiving a lot of questions already before the town hall started, and what we decided to do is to format the presentation the following way. I'll start by giving some remarks about the general structure of some of the announcements that have been made around academics at Colorado College for next fall. By doing that, I'll be answering already a bunch of questions that have been asked and are coming in as I speak. Then I will turn to my colleagues and they will kind of describe the works of their office and also how their office are going to be supporting our students next fall, right, from potentially from a different structure that we typically have. So how under COVID are they going to be able to provide those services? And again, once they do this, I think a lot of the questions are going to be answered that way. And after that, we're going to open then to be able to try to answer the questions that are coming in. Now, for full disclosure, there are most likely a number of questions that we won't be able to answer today, simply because of the volume of questions that are going to be coming in, but also that there are some questions that we currently don't have the answer to. We're going to do our best to try to answer them in writing. As we see the questions coming in, and perhaps even later in the next couple of days, and share that in our COVID response webpage. So what I want to start is by kind of reviewing and what our phased approach to our return to campus looks like currently, with the information that we have currently. So the college has announced the first-year students, student athletes for NCAA authorized sports, RAs, new student orientation mentors, new transfer students, and our international students that are currently living on campus are welcome to return to campus by Block 1. Then all remainder students are welcome to come to campus by Block 2. Right, so that has been an announcement that has been made. Also, if students are planning to travel for fall break, so if a student is on campus, taking classes on campus, and decides that wants to travel for fall break, that Block 4 class needs to be taken via distance learning. And then the student would be welcomed back on campus by our January block. The college has formed a few working groups that are meeting throughout this month to discuss academic endeavors. One of these groups are looking at the academic program and policy. So we're looking at course grids, looking at the some policies related to classrooms and so forth, to be able to see if we can accommodate that, given the circumstances. There's also, this group is also looking into courses moving in the fall semester, from one block to another, how registration is going to occur under that environment. So right now, there's a lot of information being gathered for us to be able to make some of those determinations. There's also another group that's looking specifically at first-year students, how to onboard them, CC 100 and CC120 classes, and new student orientation and so forth. And then, of course, there are other groups that are looking at COVID prevention, testing, treatment, and response. This is not really the scope of this particular town hall, but it, of course, it relates to the academics at Colorado College, right? So the new calendar that the college has announced is very, very important for us to understand the flexibility that we're trying to provide here. So for the 2021, and I'll give you a visual here of what that looks like. For the 2021, what we're saying is that students can take up to 10 blocks worth of credit, and that's included in the comprehensive tuition. The way to visualize this is think of the fall term as being blocks 1, 2, 3, and 4 in our new January term, where you're going to have the option to take a full unit course there or a half a unit course, during the January block. The spring term then has 4 blocks as normal, blocks 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we have our summer term with 3 blocks. So there's a 12-block grid that students can choose 10 out of the 12, right? And that's going to be part of their comprehensive tuition for the year. So students can, if a student, for example, decides that wants to return to campus in block 3, that student could either take distance learning classes in block 1 and 2, and then come to campus and choose a face-to-face course in block 3, 4, J, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Right, and that would be almost it would be a full year's worth of credit. Or a student could not take classes in block 1 and 2 and start their year in block 3, and students could still have 8 blocks worth or more worth of credit by doing it in that particular way. When we talk a little bit about classes and classroom instruction, there's already some questions about this that I want to address, which is, number one, faculty have been given the authority to choose the most appropriate course format for their classes, right? So are those classes going to be via distance learning? Are classes going to be face-to-face, have face-to-face components? Now, every faculty have been instructed to be able to deliver their course via distance learning if needed, right? Depending on the circumstances next fall, it's possible that we would have to go back to a complete distance learning campus. And in that case, faculty would have enough preparation to be able to do this as they're preparing for it right now. Now, what has been a question about this already is that this also includes the CC100 and CC120. So even if first-year students are on campus, it's still possible that a first-year student will be taking distance learning classes in blocks 1 and 2. Right, so we're going to try to do the best that we can to think about students' preferences and faculty preferences for teaching, but it's possible that that's going to be the case. All block 1 classes, remember that students, not just first-year students, may be on campus by block 1, but all block 1 classes, except for some CC100 classes, will be taught via distance learning. So a student that's not a first-year student that's on campus for block 1 will be taking a distance learning class. We are also looking at doing some analysis in buildings and classroom spaces. We are, as I'm speaking, we are starting to look over buildings and looking at classroom spaces to make sure that classrooms are configured to follow guidelines for appropriate social distance, for distance learning class, for face-to-face classes. So we're hoping that in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we have a kind of nice map of campus, right, to allow us to understand the capacity of our classrooms in terms of the number of students that's feasible in order for us to deliver our curriculum. Because of that, we're also looking at large conference spaces that are traditionally not classroom spaces, theater spaces, conference room spaces that could potentially be converted to classrooms. Another piece of that's important for everyone to know is that we're also looking at, even though buildings may be configured for distance learning, we are looking at the possibility of staggering class times, right? So if classes are in the morning, would there be a possibility for us to think about classes starting at different times in the morning, right? So to avoid, abundant foot traffic in the hallways of academic buildings. Of course, I'd be remiss to say that all face-to-face instruction is going to follow state, local, and college safety protocols and guidelines. What that means is that when you imagine a face-to-face course that you potentially took as a student listening to this, last year, a face-to-face course next fall is going to look different, right? It's not going to be the same, right? So you're going to have that experience where faculty may be in the classroom, but there's going to be less students in your classroom. Most likely, you're going to be separated with appropriate social distancing. There's going to be masks or some protective barriers, right? So I think the classroom environment is going to look a little bit different. That's something for us all to think about. And as I mentioned before, there will be some relevant academic policies that we're already currently investigating. For example, registration for Block J, how's that going to look like? Our grading policy, in terms of our grading track policy, students being able to choose their grade track all the way up to the last day of the block, which we did in Block 7 and 8. We're looking into the possibility of continuing this practice for next fall. So I hope this gives everyone a good overall view of the announcements that we've made already, and perhaps some picture of how how academics is going to function at Colorado College. But I want to turn now to my colleague, Dr. Tracy Freeman, to have a conversation with you about our Colquitt Center for Academic Excellence. Tracy.
Thanks, Pedro. My name is Tracy Freeman, and I'm the Executive Director of the Colquitt Center for Academic Excellence at CC. I oversee academic support services. I collaborate with other directors on initiatives related to advising and faculty development, and I teach courses periodically in education and in the first-year program. The Colquitt Center is the umbrella for academic support services on campus, and it includes the Quantitative Reasoning Center, the Ruth Barton Writing Center. We have a cultural and linguistic diversity education specialist who works with multilingual students, and we have a thesis writing specialist who works with students completing theses and capstone presentations. We also run the Sophomore Jump program and counsel on general academic skills. We're a staff of 10 professionals and more than 90 peer tutors and consultants. The Colquitt Center offers one-on-one and group tutoring, both by appointment and on a drop-in basis. We offer supplemental course instruction through learning assistants and writing fellows, which are just tutors that are connected to specific courses and work closely with faculty members. We offer in-class and out-of-class workshops for students, and we teach adjunct courses in reading, writing, and math. Our professional staff also collaborate with faculty on course assignment design. We support faculty research and writing, and we serve as resources on issues related to teaching and learning. Each year, we work with between 75 and 80% of the students enrolled at CC, and we serve students throughout their 4 years, as well as a number of graduate students and in education and alums. We work with an extraordinary number of students compared to academic support services at other institutions. And I see our statistics as a testament to the rigors of the block plan and the quality of our services. But they also speak to the teaching and learning culture of the institution. Students at CC believe in the value of learning from their peers. They see help seeking as a sign of strength, and the very best students know how and when to seek help. And students are invested in creating a vibrant intellectual community, one that extends beyond the classroom and across individual blocks. Can you advance this slide, Pedro? Thank you. So until last spring, almost all of the academic support services we offered were primarily face-to-face. But we were able to pivot fairly quickly in the spring and begin offering our services remotely. During the fall semester, we plan to continue offering most of our services online. We believe doing so will not compromise the quality and will allow us to be accessible to students who are studying remotely or who are at high risk and would prefer to limit their exposure to other students. Of course, our situation is fluid, and so are our plans. Depending on the course the virus takes in the fall, we may be offering some limited in-person services, and you can consult our website to see what our modalities will be. For now, you can access the Writing Center through WC Online. We're open all summer. You can access support for quantitative reasoning through the QRC's website, and all of the professional staff are accessible by email, and we'll be happy to meet with you remotely. I'm going to turn it over to Teresa now.
Thanks, Tracy. As Pedro mentioned, my name is Teresa Leopold, and I'm the Director of Student Support in the Student Opportunities and Advising Hub, also known as the Hub. The Hub is a little more than a year old, and it is called the Hub because it's a center of holistic advising and partnerships across campus. The Hub was created to offer additional and more equitable support to all students, and consequently, we report to both academic affairs and student life. We partner with faculty members and faculty advisors in order to ensure students have consistent advising and access to information and opportunities. We collaborate with all student-facing CC office. My staff and I pride ourselves in knowing CC policies, procedures, and resources across campus so we can share that information with students, but also know where to refer students when more depth around a topic might be needed. As a part of holistic advising, we encourage students to explore interests, goals, and personal aspirations, and we assist students in connecting with faculty members, advisors, career coaches, and other staff members and offices across campus in order to achieve their goals. We do support students throughout their entire CC career. We want to help students make the most of their CC experience, but we also support students who might be struggling at a particular moment or with a particular issue. This could be academic or otherwise. Overall, we want students to do more than survive at CC. We want them to thrive. One of the staff members in the Hub works with students to earn grants, fellowships, and support them as they work to find summer research opportunities with faculty members. We meet with students throughout the year, but it is especially true when students start to make academic plans for future semesters. Pedro, will you switch the slide, please? What will be different? To be honest, I'm not sure that there's going to be a lot different except for possibly meeting location. We will be, and we did meet with students on Zoom for Block 7 and 8 and continue to do so over the summer. If it's possible for us to meet on campus, we will definitely be 6 feet away and wearing something like this. All of the Hub support services will remain the same, again, just depending upon COVID. So students can talk to any Hub advisor for consistency of support. We do recommend that the student talk to their Hub staff advisor if they have one. We are definitely also talking with returning students about their future plans, and we are currently talking with incoming students who already have a Hub staff advisor assigned to them. We are talking to them about their academic plans and personal plans starting in the fall. And I will hand it over to Jan Edwards.
Good afternoon from Colorado. I am Jan Edwards, Director of the Accessibility Resources Program, and we're the office that supports students with disabilities on campus. And our philosophy is that we appreciate that disability is integral to the diversity of our campus. So we partner with students, faculty, and staff to create a community that welcomes and encourages the full participation of people with disabilities in all aspects of the college. And we support students with a variety of disabilities, including learning disabilities, ADHD, mental health concerns, chronic health conditions, brain injuries, autism, physical mobility types of disabilities. Students are deaf or hard of hearing or more blind than have vision. This is not an exhaustive list of groups. But we also support students with temporary medical conditions. So this might include students with concussions, students who breaks, the right hand and might need support because they're not able to keep up with notes in class. So the situations vary widely, and our goal is to respond individually and critically to each student's concerns. Pedro, would you please advance? So as I mentioned, we provide individualized support for both distance learning and in-person classes. Some of the accommodations that our office manages are extended time for exams, distraction-reduced exam setting, use of a computer for exams and class assignments, possible for note-taking as well. Accessible formats of text. This might be audio for a student who has dyslexia, for example, or large print for a student who has low vision. We provide noting assistance for students. And this, we do this in multiple ways. We have a technology that we can loan to students called a Smart Pen. That records the class and links the recording to a student's written notes. So it's a pretty cool piece of technology. Sometimes we get copies of another student's notes that, to share with the student who might need that support. We work a lot with assistive technologies. An example of this, and one of the most used in our office, is a program called Read and Write. And this is a software platform that can provide really strong access to accessible text. This would be something on the internet, so we work closely with students to teach them how to use the technologies. We also work with accessible housing. And I know this town hall is academic. I want to mention that we have an office that is working with students who actually have assistance needed. So those are not all the accommodations we provide. That's sampling. We also provide academic counseling and assistance with time management. Organizational skills, how to be effectively, how to combine things
So Jen is having some issues with her audio, and what we're going to do is I'm going to ask Jen to record her presentation, and kind of so we can share this with everybody else, either on the Colorado College webpage or on our Facebook page. I'm going to move to Alan Birch as our next speaker.
Thank you, Pedro, and hopefully my sound works well. I'm Alan Birch. I'm the Director for Global Education, which is part of the Center for Global Education and Field Study. Our office handles essentially three main areas. We work on all education abroad, whether that's semester-away programs or faculty-led block programs during the year or the summer. We work with faculty-led field experiences and field study, and we work with our international student population with our student and scholar support on pretty much a holistic approach to all types of issues that international students may encounter. You may know us because of our coordination of things like international student arrival, orientation, and support, or through our faculty-led study-away experiences, whether domestic or international. And Pedro, if you could move the slide forward, I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing this year. Most of you are probably already aware that we have been, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, closing programs, suspending programs, canceling programs overseas. That is true through the fall. Our spring, our summer, and our fall programs have been suspended. We have guidelines in place, a series of 8 requirements that our spring and summer programs will have to meet next spring in order to be able to operate. And so we're continuously monitoring the situation regarding travel restrictions as well as health and safety in each of our program destinations. We're hoping to be able to return to study-away programming as soon as it's safe to do so. We also have developed a set of requirements for all field experiences associated to CC classes. And so that will be in place to ensure that all of our courses that take students out into the field are following appropriate CDC and Colorado health regulations. Our office is spending a lot of time right now working with our international student population on immigration, visa, and arrival issues. And we'll continue to do that throughout the year as we see changing expectations or requirements from the federal government related to international student enrollment. And finally, we're really within the sort of student face-to-face contact that we have during the year. We're planning several things that will allow us to use distance, including regularly scheduled drop-in advising hours where students can log in on Zoom and meet with our advisors to talk about either study-away issues, or international student and immigration issues. We're going to be running some virtual workshops as well as virtual study away fairs this year, which will still allow students to get to know the different providers and partners we have around the world and talk to them about opportunities either this spring, summer, or the following school year. So that's a little bit about how we're working with students. Of course, all of our staff is available to students through email, and we're all happy, as other offices have said, to have virtual meetings with students in order to be able to discuss whatever is of interest to them. I think now we're going to move on to some of our question and answer session, unless Jan is going to be coming back in.
We're trying to still figure out her microphone, but it may just be we'll just jump into some of the questions. There are a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to try to do my best to direct traffic here. There's a common theme in terms of questions. There's some questions, I believe, related to registration and related to what's going to happen to fall registration as new course grids, come on board. So as you know, students currently, returning students, and this one I think I can try to address it. Returning students have registered for the fall semester. So currently, returning students have their classes set for the fall. Of course, some of these classes may change, given that, departments may be moving and thinking about different types of instructions and things of that nature. Of course, the college is committed to trying to honor, right, these students' registrations, right? So as much as possible, right, we're hoping that there's not significant movement in fall classes, right, to allow, for a lot of those registration patterns to remain the same. We don't intend at this point to reopen, right, registration for all students, right, and have students register again, right, for fall semester. We are looking at the possibility of, if a course moves completely, from one block to another, from, for example, block 3 to block J, or from block 3 to block 7, that we would give preference to the students that are currently enrolled in those classes to be able to move that, and give them priority registration for those courses, right, to the best of our ability. We are also looking at the possibility of looking at different bottleneck courses, courses that are that have high demand and that may be useful for us to offer at different blocks. So we're trying to see if those courses could be offered, for example, in J block, and then we could potentially get students on the wait list and move them automatically to courses during blocks J. We're also investigating the possibility of thinking about enrollments for online classes. Of course, we don't want those enrollments to be large because we still want to, even if a course is delivered via distance learning, we still want that intimate experience. But there is more wiggle room for distance learning courses than we would have, for face-to-face. So we plan that hopefully by the end of this month, we should have an announcement, or we should have a plan in terms of how we are going to be reallocating students to different classes in the fall. Spring registration should still happen in block 3, so that gives us some flexibility to think about what that grid is going to look like, and we're going to allow then students through our normal mechanism, right, to register for courses in the spring semester. Let's see. I'm going to have to go back and see some of these other questions here that we have. So there's a question here for Teresa. Is the hub open this summer to provide support for students?
Yes, we are definitely, open virtually. So we are having Zoom meetings or WebEx meetings with anyone who wants to talk with us. If you go to the CC website and search the hub, you'll get to our webpage and scroll down a little bit, and there's a spot where you can schedule an appointment with a hub staff advisor.
Thank you. There's just another question about the January block, and I think I can answer this one. we will be able to see during registration for those classes if the class will be online or in person. Yes, we are working with departments to be able to allow, like I mentioned before, faculty are going to have the authority to choose the format of courses that they deliver, and we're going to, this month, we're going to compile what's the format of those courses that are going to be delivered, and we're going to be able to upload this description of the course, right, or that is the format of the course into Banner, so that students would be able to, as you are looking at classes, to be able to know if those classes are going to be via distance learning or not. Tracy, there's a question about the sophomore jump program. Are we going to have the sophomore jump program next year?
Yeah, we will. All of the programs that make sense online, we will be hosting online next year. So we have a few in-person events, a celebration of choosing a major and a majors fair. We're going to get creative around the majors fair, but we haven't quite figured out the details around the technology yet. Stay tuned because we usually update that website for the fall semester's programming in August.
Thank you. There's a question about CC 100. There's a question related to will CC 100 be offered in a different block? As of right now, no. The answer is CC 100 is going to be offered in block 1. And then, of course, there's going to be a couple CC 100 offered in block 5, right, for the students that are winter starts. So the way that CC 100 may be offered is that it could be, some of the CC 100s could be via online, and others are distance learning, and others, face to face. So for first year students, right, first year students would have the option, right, to come to campus in block 1 and take one of these classes, stay at home and take a distance learning version of ACC 100, right, and potentially defer to a winter start, right, with our approval, right, and then take a CC 100 when it's offered in block 5. But there's not going to be, as of right now, a CC 100 offered in blocks 2, 3, or 4. All right. Just browsing through, there's so many questions. So I think I've answered, let's see. There's a question about student athletes. Can student athletes, what do we mean by student athletes in NCAA approved sports? The best way that I can answer that is those are fall sports plus tennis and hockey. Those are the NCAA authorized sports for students that are will be welcome, back to campus by block 1. Let's see. So there's a question about our point system in registration, a lot of registration questions. There's a question about our point allocation. What does it mean for how is that going to operate if we have to change some of the registration patterns? One of the working groups is actually working on this, and currently there is no plan to change spring registration in terms of what we do for points. But there is a conversation about the J block and how that registration would occur. Could we use a different selection mechanism, to allow students to be able to register for J block? So this information is still going to be available, hopefully at the end of the month, and students then should know exactly how they're going to be able to register for these courses. Question for Alan. Are blocks abroad, blocks abroad in the spring, will they be available?
Currently, we still have our full listing of spring blocks abroad as active, and some are still recruiting students for those blocks. We've set up a process wherein we will be reviewing all of the spring blocks before pre-registration in November to see if any of them are not viable because of the COVID-19 pandemic. There are about 8 requirements that any program will have to be able to pass in order to be considered viable and to be able to run. And so we'll do that assessment before the November pre-registration, and then again 60 days before departure to determine if we have to suspend a program or if we'll be able to run a program. But at present, we are planning for the best and having strategies in place for the worst case scenario.
Thanks, Alan. Stay right there. There's another one for you.
Mm-hmm.
How is the executive order for that has for international students going to impact incoming current CC students?
Well, new first-year students are perhaps one of the groups that is least impacted by the new immigration guidelines because they haven't begun their academic careers yet. And so if students are able to arrive in August, if they're in a country, for example, where there's no travel restriction, we're recommending that they do arrive in August for international student orientation and to begin Block 1 with CC 100. And those students who are not able to arrive in country due to travel restrictions, we're recommending that they defer their arrival until January. But that does not mean they have to defer their academic program until January. They have the choice of either taking a gap semester and beginning their courses in January, or they can begin with online courses this fall. Doing that will not impact their immigration status should they, when they plan to arrive in January. So that particular group, first year new students, we believe are not impacted by new guidelines for immigration. They are still unfortunately impacted by some of the travel restrictions.
Thank you. There's a quick question about C block. In the summer, as you remember, the academic calendar, during C, there's 12, the grid has 12 blocks, right? So 3 blocks in the summer. Is that for sure going to be offered at this point? The plan is to have some classes during block C. Of course, I think that the number of classes that will be offered in block C may not be as large as in blocks A and B, but that's also going to depend on registration patterns from students, in the fall and the spring semester. So for example, if students between blocks 1 and 8, right, those 9 blocks, right, there's J block there, right, so those 9 blocks, if students, for example, only take 7 out of those 9, that student could potentially take blocks A, B, and C, right, in order to get, 10 blocks worth of academic credit. So I anticipate that there's going to be some movement in terms of the summer blocks, but for sure, I anticipate offering summer C blocks. Tracy, there's a question for you. Can you talk a little bit about how some of and you touched this on your presentation, but could you talk a little bit about, and I'll extend the question, about the services that may be provided at the QRC? And then I guess you can talk about the Writing Center as well next fall.
So in Block 7, the QRC was experimenting using a technology called Discord. And it did not seem that students were using that resource anywhere nearly the way that they were using the on-campus services. And so what we ended up doing was creating a lot more positions for learning assistants who were embedded, for better or for worse, to say that they're embedded in a class that was already, and so that the students who were in individual classes knew exactly who their tutors were. And we're working with them on a much more regular basis. And that seemed incredibly effective for students. And so for the fall, I think we're going to be starting with individual tutoring, followed by or alongside a lot of the learning assistants that are attached to the classes. But if you had a question, I'd be interested to hear about experiences with Discord if you want to email me offline. And the Writing Center is working through WC Online in synchronous tutoring sessions. So students can schedule an appointment and meet for 45 minutes to an hour with a writing tutor over a platform that's very similar to Zoom that also has the capacity to share screens. And so those sessions have been working really well.
Thank you. Too many buttons for me to manage here, but I'm dealing with it. There's some concern about, and this I think I can answer this one, or I can take a stab at it. Of students, seniors that may need requirements to graduate, seniors that they are into a particular schedule that requires, prerequisites, one course, then another, and so forth. My best answer to this is that we're going to work with every senior that's on a case-by-case basis that is in this particular situation. We're going to work with departments. Departments here on campus are very accommodating. Faculty are very accommodating. They really, in Block 7 and 8, did a fantastic job. They were required to change their format of their courses, pretty much, within a couple of days, and they did it. And I think that for seniors, right, that potentially could be missing a requirement or doing things of that nature, right, we do have a process by which we can analyze every senior on a case-by-case basis. It filters through my office, and then in conversations with departments, we can try to figure out what would be the best solution for that particular senior. What we don't want to happen is if a senior has planned and is currently registered to graduate by the end of the academic year, and it are in those classes, right, that we would not want for that senior to have to come back here in the fall, to finish their work. So we're going to do the best that we can to make sure that we can accommodate seniors and that they can be able to graduate on time. Let's see. Let me another one here. There's a question about block 4 and what does that mean? So block 4, I believe, in terms of the academic calendar, it kind of starts. There's a week of block 4, and then we have fall break, and then we have 2.5 weeks. And there are questions about, could a student start block 4, travel, and then finish block 4 remotely? The answer to that question is it depends, because it depends on the type of course that the student is in. So if, for example, if it is a class where the first week is face-to-face, but then the last 2 weeks, 2 week and a half of the course is actually online, then absolutely that student could finish block 4. If that's not a possibility, my advice would be to have a conversation with a faculty member. In general, like if a course is face-to-face, it's not for certain that a student would be able to stay home and take the course online, right, while other students are taking the course face-to-face, right? So my recommendation, or my advice to students would be to really have a conversation with the faculty teaching in block 4, right? Probably, by block 1, right, to be able to figure out, right, what would be the best course of action if students intend to travel out of state for block 4. Scrolling through. Trying to. There's a question about summer wildcard for seniors. Have we changed that policy at this point? The answer to that question is no. So currently, the same policy in terms of wildcard usage is the same. But I do want to emphasize that we are offering up to 10 blocks. So, for example, if a senior wanted to use, let's say, their wild card for the summer, right? Take eight blocks out of the year and then use a wild card for the summer. That senior could still do that right now, right? Because we're offering 10 blocks. So in a sense, right, we are extending that policy, right, to all students that would allow a student to take 9 blocks out of the year and then take that A block, right, as part of the comprehensive tuition, right, for the college. I don't know if Jan can come back, and hopefully it works, but I hope there's a question about vulnerable students that are not seniors, living off campus. Jan, I don't know if you can address that question.
Can you hear me now? Awesome. Apologies for the earlier difficulty. I had absolutely no idea what happened. Can you repeat that question, please?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a question about vulnerable students that are not senior, potentially living off campus. Is that a possibility? Is there a mechanism for that? I mean, could you explain some of that housing aspect? I mean, you can be broader in terms of your answer, but kind of like how does that work?
Absolutely. So the college is looking at a variety of housing options for students. Our office is working very closely with Residential Experience and the Housing Office, and we'll be looking at each student situation individually. Off-campus options that are still now considered college housing expanded. So we have many more options than we've had in the past. So my recommendation is if you have a student housing for housing and it's related to health, mental health, please get in touch with our office. We're happy to walk through that process and help coordinate with housing needs at your experience.
Thanks, Jen. At the end, where you broke up a little bit, if you could type the answer in terms of our back channel, Drew can upload that answer to, and that we can do that. There's a question for Alan. If the school adopts an online-only model pathway through the year or for the second semester, will all in-person classes be made available to international students so that they are not deported or forced to leave?
Well, I think we have to remember that the guidelines that were sent out, the ones that have talked about students having to leave, are only valid through the fall. And we anticipate that the federal government will be putting out new guidelines for the spring sometime later this year. If they have a similar pattern, meaning that students are required to take some in-person courses, we will certainly work with our faculty to ensure that there's some option for those students who wish to remain in the United States if the COVID-19 pandemic is still continuing to be an issue. So again, we have with our mix of online and in-person courses, we can minimize the impact of the type of regulations that are currently in place if those continue into the spring.
Thanks, Alan. There's a question here from a first-year student. I think I can answer this one. Can I only take block 1 online, be on campus for block 2? I don't see that as an option, right? So this is really going to depend on your pairing for the CC100, CC120, right? So if for example, if you're not going to be on campus, right, by block 1, then of course your CC100 must be taken via distance learning. If you plan then on coming to campus by block 2, if your CC120 is in person, then you would be taking that class in person. But if your CC120 is delivered via distance learning, then you could potentially be on campus, right, taking CC120, via distance learning. So in that sense, you would have the option to be on campus by block 2, right, or be on campus in block 3. There's more questions talking about will students be able to have the complete information about courses in terms of their format? Absolutely. But it's going to take us some time to be able to do it, like I mentioned before. So give us this month or so to be able to determine how courses are going to be taught, and that information is going to make its way into our banner system for sure. There's a question about the updated spring course grid. Would that be sent out with the fall course grid? We would have a spring course grid for sure. We're asking all departments to work on their course grids for the year. So we would have availability, right, of that course grid for everyone. However, I must emphasize that we are living in uncertain times, right? So even if we do have, and the longer the horizon, the more uncertain we are, right? So even though you may be able to have access to the course grids and courses in the spring semester to make some plans, my advice is for students to be flexible, to understand that certain things may change, right? Certain courses may move around, right? So what the college currently has are the course grids that were available at the time of when students were planning for the spring semester. So we understand right now which courses have high demand that are currently in our books for the spring semester, that we're going to try to do our best to preserve them, right? So that students would be able to take them. But it's possible, because students are no longer, they're not registered for these courses yet, that there is some movement, that there is a larger movement in spring classes than we're going to see in the fall. So I think we have time for maybe two more questions. So the colleges, there's a question about, and I think it would be remiss if I didn't. There's two questions here that I don't have the answer to, but we will have the answers, moving forward. But I want to be able to acknowledge that. One is, like, what would happen if a student needs to go into isolation and the student is taking a particular class, right? We are, like I said, there's the academic policies group that's looking at how we would deal with that particular situation, right? So there's of course the safety aspect of making sure that everybody else has less of a risk of contamination, but there's also we have to also take into consideration that we want to make sure that that particular student could perhaps be making academic progress, right? So we're going to try to figure out at this point a way, right, to allow, to treat some of these on a case-by-case basis in terms of the academic progress piece, right? Of course, we're going to have in place protocols and guidelines, for safety. There are spaces on campus, right, that have been designated for isolation, and some of those spaces are going to be utilized in that case. There's also questions about gap years. We're also having conversations about that piece. What are the rules and what are the guidelines about gap year? So once all the information is out, when the course grid is out, if a student, for example, is interested in taking a gap year, the college is in the process of developing what that means and how is that going to work. So if we could just wait, for a couple more weeks, we should be able to have an answer for that one. I think we have room for one more question. So there's a question. I think this is a good question for us to end in. There's a question: Will faculty be advised to be thoughtful about the fact that this pandemic is traumatic, along with other factors and decisions that are made that can impact the student performance? More specifically, will faculty extend grace, to be intentional about workloads and deadlines? Our faculty is very generous. Our faculty understand that these are difficult situations. Our faculty has been very accommodating to students regardless of the situation that we're in. I guarantee that faculty are going to be very accommodating. However, right, faculty are also going to preserve the rigor, right, of our academic institution, of our academic curriculum, right? So if that means that there could potentially be extension to assignments and things of that nature, this already occurs, right? Faculty are very sympathetic empathetic to students' individual needs. I think all my colleagues in this panel would agree with me in terms of the way we support students and the way the faculty communicate with them about the support that's necessary for some students in the classroom. I anticipate that to continue. I anticipate that to be enhanced, right? And I anticipate that, given certain circumstances, the college is going to work with faculty, and faculty are going to be the first ones to let administrators know that we need to adapt, that we need to be reasonable, that we need to be humane to students, right, under this particular situation. And so I don't see that as being a problem. I don't see that the faculty need to be advised to do this. I think they've been doing this in the first place. So I want to thank everyone for, if anyone could put back there, if you could come back on video so we can say goodbye. But I want to thank everyone, for participating. We didn't get to answer all of the questions. There was just so many questions, but we're going to try to do our best, through our COVID website to try to provide some answers to some of these questions some of these themes that are being asked. But if there are other things that you would like for us to do, make sure I want to show our last. Here are some potential links for you to be able to to ask questions, for you to be able to browse and help us in planning for next academic year. So again, I want to thank all of my colleagues, for participating in this panel. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and I want to thank everyone for participating. Be safe out there. Thank you.